Are you average? Do you live average? Is your existence average? I'm Average Justin, and this is an average podcast called Talk Junkie. Bukowski says, beware of the average. Beware of the average man. Beware of the average woman. Beware of their love, because their love is average. What does it mean to be average? Well, I can tell you. It would mean that most people, most things are average in some concern, respect, form, whatever it may be. Some way, shape, or form, you hit the average mark. Maybe not in every moment of every life. Is average an insult? It's possibly inescapable in some realms. I'm supposed to say, well, no, you don't have to be average. You can excel. You can be greater than. You can be better than. You can be better than average. You can be better than average at things that you are better than average at. Things that you are able to obtain the talent to be better than average. But even, let's say, Michael Jordan, he's still average in probably most regards. It's not basketball. You know, anyone, regardless of what they do. This for Mug. He will appreciate this example. LeBron James is not average at flopping. He is extraordinary at flopping. He's above average in most other regards in basketball, but he's extraordinary at flopping. I'm sure at most other things in life, he's average or less than average. But that's life. That's what we are. In all seriousness, as people, we are average to some degree in some endeavor, if not most, and find ourselves to be extraordinary maybe only at one thing, maybe never at anything. It depends on how much that thing is sought after, or if it's ever even piqued into our interest, or if we ever have the ability to seek it, the ability to chase it. I often think about this area, this place that I grew up in, this average place. Below average in a lot of regards, especially in certain opportunities. And I've read a lot of things lately about inner cities and opportunities in inner cities and people who get out of inner cities. And I've heard people who come from what they call a ghetto or a gang-infested area, a slum in an inner city say, I got out because I pursued something, because I excelled at something. Music got me out, or my grandparents giving me opportunity got me out, or me working extremely hard got me out, or athletics got me out. You see, and I see people here in my area leave and do well for themselves, and the argument's often made, well, they worked harder, or they tried to exceed at something, or they were focused, or they were destined to, or it was in God's plans for them, or whatever the myriad of excuses of why they were able to leave and you weren't, or if you even wanted to leave, why you were not able to leave. And it puts you in the bracket of average. I'm an author. I'm a published author. An average published author. My sales are not phenomenal. My sales are not even noticed, I'm sure, amongst the various people that look at sales and crunch numbers and manipulate such data and understand and study such things. I'm not even a blip on their screen. I'm average. I'm an average father. Better than some, worse than others. I'm average. An average husband. My wife may argue that and say I'm a below average husband. I'm an average human being. Is that an insult? Is that a bad thing? In certain goals and certain aspects, some people want to not strive for mediocrity, but strive to fit in, to meet the status quo. And if you're going to run for office, it's good if people kind of consider you the average Joe. It's a good thing to be average in that regard. It's a bad thing to be average when you're just an average author, an average podcaster, an average businessman, an average employee, an average this, an average that. There's a negative connotation put on it because You're just average. When this whole coronavirus thing is over, the real story will be the status of the country in various forms, mentally, health-wise, physical health, mental health, economic health, so many things. And our government will print money it doesn't have, and it will give to people that don't need it, people like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and things of that nature. And look, I've heard all the statistical arguments from all of the aficionados on economics. I see the impact that saving the steakhouse company makes, and it's nowhere near the impact of making sure that someone, say, of McDonald's stature, someone that we villainize. They don't make real food, and I agree with that, and they don't pay a living wage, and they're awful, horrible human beings, but without them, average people can't even make a below average income. But Ruth Chris is not giving the average person a below average income. It's giving a little bit more average person a little bit more than an average income on occasion, and at such a small level does it really impact us. Now Walmart is making substantial gross, and they will be average in no way, shape, or form once this is over. They were above average before. I'm sure there's many markers in which they hit average, but for the most part they're above average. But let's not look at companies. Let's not look at organizations. Let's not look at all these people they're bailing, all these companies they're bailing out. Let's look at individuals. And more specifically, let's look at individuals in specific places. Individuals in the coal fields, individuals in the mountains, individuals in some of the highest poverty counties in the United States of America, individuals in urban cities, in quote, ghettos and hoods, individuals who come from areas that are less than, people right on the verge of Skid Row, or people right in Skid Row. Where do they fall after this is over? Well, see, they're below average. We here in the mountains are below average. And how, per se, do you get out of the mountains? Do you get out of the hills? Do you get out of the hollers? How do you get out of the hoods? How do you get out of the ghettos? You strive to be above average. But see, not just to be above average, but to be above average at something. Something those who have the ability to... something that those who have the ability to reward you with deem to be worthy of being above average at. That's the goal. That's it. Come be our athletes. Oh, the Roman Empire's fallen. Gladiators are gone. Not really. You still have the UFC. You still have kickboxing and boxing. And I ride a very, very thin line with that. I'm in that gray area to where I don't know how I feel. I feel one is superior to the other in its ability to protect the athlete, but on the other hand, it's more violent than the other. And I mean, we have professional athletes, we have football players. CTE is stock and trade now for these individuals. They give you millions of dollars well before you're prepared to own it, to do anything with it, and then once I cripple you and mentally take away your memory and your quality of life, I've compensated you with tons of money. Spend that money on trying to reclaim that quality of life that you'll never get back. We have doctors that came out of Eastern Kentucky that come back to Eastern Kentucky. We've scientists, any possible thing you can imagine. People have the ability to rise up and to be extraordinary at the things that society has deemed extraordinary and the things that society has deemed valuable. But see, most people are average. Einstein was average. When it comes to tying shoes, Einstein was average. When it comes to doing many things, Einstein was average. Tesla was average. When it became being a businessman, when it came down to being greedy, when it came down to understanding the mechanics of making money over making discoveries, Tesla was average. Many people are average. All people are average. So that's what they're not telling you. All places are average. All people are average. So they say don't placate. Don't play to the power of the average. Don't play to the appeal of the average. Don't lift up the average. Demand them to be above average. But above average at what? To be above average at what you would deem to be valuable? Well, that's ridiculous. It's absurd. Above average. Everyone's average in some regard. Everyone comes from an average town and an average city and an average county and an average state and an average country and an average world. We are average. Do you think because people are born in, say, New York City, they're above average compared to someone born in Eastern Kentucky? What's the difference between a holler and a squalor? Very different. No, not really. It's almost the same exact thing. Circumstances are the same, even though the environment looks different. The individuals are different, but average is average. To be completely honest with you, most of us are not average. Most of us are below average. We come from a family who makes below average money. We live in below average housing. Almost 100% of us, no matter how rich, eat below average food. We definitely get below average entertainment. You downloaded this podcast. Below average, at every turn below average. Yet, average isn't even good enough. Average isn't even acceptable. They did a study. It's a former prosecutor, and this has been done other places, studying crime tendencies in a certain inner city area. The crime had never changed. The age of the perpetrators had never really changed. The age range stayed basically there. The color of their skin really didn't change. They were average. They weren't above average. They didn't work to get out of that situation. They were just average. Even though their life is below average. Below what average should be. Because see, there's the real average, which is below average. And then there's the average that everyone speaks of, which is nice home, suburban life, $150,000 a year, 2.5 kids, 2 new cars, newest pair of LeBron Jameses on each kid's feet, college scholarship with just a little bit of college debt once the kids. That's average. Who's living that average? Middle America's not living that average. Low-income people are definitely not living that average. Rich people are living far above that average. So there's the fictitious average. And there's the real average. The real average being much closer to below average. Are you tired of the word yet? Because see, it's how we address things. It's how we look at things. It's how we expect people to behave. If I want to be the greatest author in the world, all I have to do is to strive to be above average. It's on me. It's my burden to bear. It's not a matter of talent. Okay, let's be honest. Let's be candid. I'm not talented enough to be such a great author. But that's okay. I'm fine with being an average author. But if I wanted to be, I would merely just have to strive to be above average. Because see, it's easy. When there's a problem, an obvious problem, and we look at the problem and we say the problem needs to be fixed. And it does. The problem's obvious. I mean, it's right there. Lack of opportunity. Lack of income. Lack of various options. All these things that there's a lack of. So what do? Do we look at those areas that have an abundance and go, okay, you have an abundance. You're okay. We're not going to take from you because it's yours. But we're going to expect you to maintain. To maintain on the same level that we ask these people who have a lack of to maintain. And then, while you're maintaining, we're going to go to these people and we're going to help them. We're going to help bring in different means of taking away the inefficiencies, different things we can do to cure the lack of, until they have at least an appropriate amount, if not an abundance. If we can at least actually get them to average, because if most people were actually able to start from average, not average for their area, but a global average, a collective average, if they were actually able to start from average, then the rate of getting above average would be far higher. But see, it's easier to look at that situation and go, well, I'm making more money where there's abundance. Because see, that's what even governments do now. Governments, they make money for individuals. They make money for groups, for companies, at the cost of the average. So it's much easier to say, I'm going to stick with where there's an abundance. But I'm going to tell you what. You have the right to be here with the abundant. You have the opportunity, in theory, to be here with the abundant. I'm going to actually even tell you, I want you to be here with the abundant. All it requires is that you give extra effort, above average effort, that you work harder, well beyond the average, that you sacrifice more than the average, that you want it more than the average. Then, luck won't be an issue. Timing won't be an issue. Situation won't be an issue. Pure chance won't be an issue. It'll simply be because you chose to be above average. Now, I can't define average for you. You have to define average for yourself. And I can't give you the opportunities or give you the help or give you the push. I'll give you some. And for every little push and opportunity I give, I'll take a little something else away in a different area. And this will always be abundant over here. And this will always be, let's call it, average over here. And if you want to get out of that average, just be above average. It sounds stupid, doesn't it? I mean, it sounds stupid. Obviously, it's a satirical thing. Obviously, I'm joking to some degree. I mean, I say average every 5 seconds. It's to get a point across. It's to make you think about it. It's a thought exercise. It's not to sit down and talk about the people, the individuals, the reasons why you're being held back. Because if you do that, at the end of the day, you'll still have those same people to blame. But if you talk about the ideal, if you talk about the reason, the situation, then possibly you can look at it from a different angle. Look at it objectively from the outside, even if you're not in it, even if you're not amongst the average. We only want to reward people who are above that, or above that threshold so deemed as average. And they're to be the only ones to deserve a way out of average. Well, real average isn't really that bad. We're all average to some degree, but we don't get to exist in a real average world. There's poverty, there's excess, there's a small patch in between. Let's not ask for people to be below average. Let's not expect for people to be below average. Let's understand what average is and how we define it. And then let's not say your goal in life is to get above average because we don't want to help those below average. We don't want to help those that are average. That's a stopping point. You've done well enough. That's your lot in life, and you get to go no further unless you really want it. Let's instead look at the fact that average is the average. That's what the damn word means. And let's try to get the below average to average. And hell, let's get crazy. Once we get them to average, let's try to get them above average. Let's make the purpose in life to help others succeed. To understand that failure will be more common because we are all average. I think that's fair. Fair is a different word for a different day, for a different podcast. Roosevelt said, "Do what you can with what you have where you are." It's Teddy, I believe. Do what you can in your average place with the average things you have, with the average person you are.